In the world of American politics, where power and influence are as fleeting as the latest trending tweet, one man rose from obscurity to shape history through the art of data and persuasion. Brad Parscale is the digital mastermind behind one of the most unconventional political campaigns in U.S. history. But who is Brad Parscale really? Parscale's story is one of ambition, innovation, and immense success, but also pressure of the political spotlight. This is the untold story of a man who disrupted the system entirely. In this episode, we take a look at how Brad Parscale's work on the Trump campaign changed American politics forever. Is a window into Brad Parscale's life a mirror to your own?
Mirrors and Windows with Katrina Campins.
So Brad, last time most people heard of you or saw you, right? There was a SWAT team outside your house, camera crews, right? And you were being accused of just about everything under the sun.
Yep.
And I remember the moment because I was sitting in my living room with my mom, and I remember seeing this in my heart. You know, we've been friends for a very long time. And my heart just broke, right? And I reached out to your mom. And it was such an incredibly wild time. What did you feel during that time? Do you have any regrets? Would you change anything?
Well, I wouldn't have that day happen. I mean, obviously, it was a very hard day, but no. I mean, actually, now it's actually it all turned out for the better. It was a great reset for me, and it was a great way for me to see what really mattered in life. Obviously, none of those accusations were true, so nothing ever happened. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of lies packed on top of lies to get people to hate me, but I think that day and, you know, the whole COVID period and leaving Trump world for a while and resetting was an experience that brought me closer to God. It helped me start to understand that I have limits, and you know me, I'm not one much of admitting that there's nothing I can't do. And I learned how to say no after that to some things. And there's the media's version of that day, and then there's reality. Mm-hmm. And most people don't understand that unless you've ever lived in the limelight. And, you know, every once in a while I Google myself or chat GPT, and I'm just like, didn't happen. I don't even know where that one came from. And then every once in a while they get something right. And then, you know, there's the world's view, there's the media's view, and then there's reality, and then there's your reality.
Well, I think also that day, the media was still trying to hate on Trump every which way.
Oh, it was the height of COVID.
Right.
So it was 2 months to go to the election. Yeah. It's funny about the whole thing. I didn't know it was really happening until it was happening. The entire thing is based off a bunch of things I didn't even know. But I don't want to dwell on that day. The days in the past. And nothing happened from it, but a bunch of media.
Right. And you now have a completely different outlook on life. And I know you
But it's not from that day. And my outlook on life is from February 21st, 2015, 9:18 p.m. until January 20th, 2021. Those 6 years or so redefined my life, to redefine the world, redefined every relationship I had, redefined what family meant, what love, life, God, pain, everything was redefined in that period of time. And it was a ride that was pretty amazing, and it still continues. But those 6 years really defined the way I see life now.
And talk to us a little bit more about what was happening during those 6 years, because it was wild.
Yeah, I mean, I never wanted to get in politics. I kind of fell into the river on accident. Didn't know I was going into the Colorado Rockies and the Rapids. And February of 2020 or 2015, sorry, I get an email, and it's Amanda Miller, who you know, who was the pretty lady at the front of The Apprentice. Mm-hmm. And the email simply said, you know, Trump's thinking about running for president. Would you like to help? And I replied back, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. And that's how the journey started.
But you first came to know the Trump family. I think that's
way back when.
Right.
Way back when.
And tell us that story.
I have this firm. It ended up being a very large firm. Everyone always says I was this kind of like homeless web designer. That's not true. I was one of the largest agencies in Texas, did over $100 million in revenue, 100 employees, 24,000 square foot building, customers around the world. This is always the myth. The left wants to say that I was some homeless guy that Trump made me rich. And it's a good narrative to make me look like a grifter. And all my enemies use it. Enemies who want that, what they think I'm taking, because they're actually the grifters. And I had this web agency, and we were having some success, and there was a flight one night. And this woman was on the plane. Her name was Kathy Kay, and she got my phone number from a person on a napkin. Next day calls me. I talked to her for an hour. I don't barely remember the conversation a little bit. Now I remember telling the story of remembering it. And she ends up getting the job at Trump. And she was CEO of Sotheby's at the time, ends up becoming the CEO of Trump International Realty. Mm-hmm. And she's in a board meeting with the Trumps and recommends me, pulls out my napkin, and I bid. And I bid for the website. And I bid a very low number, and $10,000, $100,000 by far more or less than anybody else. And I won the contract. And I told Eric, I said, if I nail it out of the park, then all I need from you is for you to tell the San Antonio Express News, what the time our office was, that I was the best web marketer he ever worked with. He upheld that, and the ride began. Mm-hmm. And it became Melania, Ivanka, Eric, then eventually then Jared, then Don Jr., and Ivana, and Marla, and Tiffany, and pretty soon, I was pretty accepted in that family for a long time. I wasn't really invited to family events until the campaign till we won, and I played a big part, obviously, in that. And the people who really know the campaign, someone like yourself, know the truth. There's the stories, the media, the reality, and then your reality kind of thing, right? And reality is acquired taste. Most people don't like the taste of it. And, and I kept on going into the campaign. And then I started taking jobs I probably wasn't prepared for. But I'm one to take any challenge, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help. And it was damn affirming to have the President of the United States ask you to become campaign manager when you've never been one before in your whole life.
How did you feel in that moment, right? Because you're known for, and I want to say this because you empower people, especially women.
I appreciate that.
And you allow people to shine, right? You're not threatened by anybody. And that makes you more powerful. You're also extremely empathetic. But in that moment when Trump came to you and said, Brad, I want you to be my campaign manager, what went through your mind?
Well, I had known it was coming for a few days. The kids, which I call the kids, which they're all younger than me, Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka had all kind of said, Brad, we really want you to do this. At that moment, I don't know if there would have been anybody else other than me that could have pulled all the pieces together. I had built enough coalition. I had, I didn't have the enemies I'd have later. I was probably the most logical person to keep the Titanic from sinking, let alone get the Titanic moving faster and more nimble. I think that they'd all seen there was an angle where I could pull all that off. I also had no skeletons, really. I hadn't been in politics. I'd only worked for Trump. You couldn't say I'm not MAGA because I'm the first MAGA person. I get check one. I'm the first person to say yes. So you can't beat me in that, in MAGA world, being there first matters, and you can't be before me other than Trump.
And I can attest to that because I was working for Trump International Realty at the time because Eric and Ivanka and everybody had convinced me to do that. And then I was flying to New York to meet with Eric, and you were running the campaign basically, even back then in 2016. And I remember you're like, you want to go do lunch? Hey, do you want to be on a campaign? I'm like, I don't know anything about politics. You're like, no one else does. But this is, this is us, basically.
This is the people.
And it was such an empowering moment.
Yeah. And back then, I wasn't the campaign manager, but I had a huge say into how money was being spent, how the marketing, everything that was the messaging. I didn't do comms. That was Kellyanne and Jason Miller and these other people. I didn't have a lot of say in that. I didn't have that experience yet that I do now. I didn't advise Trump in that year. That was Stephen Miller and these other people. When I talk about the campaign, I talk about the marketing campaign, the external campaign. There's Donald Trump and then there's a campaign. And that campaign's job is to get 1% more to show up. maybe 2%. And that's how do you get people to show up to the ballot box? How do you get people to give you $1 so you have money to go spend on advertising? That was the campaign I was in charge of. There's a lot of conflict where people say, you say that you're a campaign manager. Kellyanne was a campaign manager, but that wasn't the campaign she was in charge of. She didn't tell me what to go do and all those things. I would say each of us kind of took a section and we went and conquered it, and together we won. But the media tries to, Brad Parscale says he was the campaign manager.
So when we start talking about marketing, right, where did MAGA come from? Yeah,
so Make America Great Again is a slogan that's been around for a while. I think Ronald Reagan had said it first in a speech back in the 1970s. It had been around. Trump revitalized that. But I think where you start seeing MAGA start to occur is in the social media warfares of the 2016 campaign. We had, as an agency, we took up an alarming amount of creative that we needed to make. So we needed to make creative for prospecting, but also Facebook had opened up, very significantly their ad network to us. And I recognized with a couple of my other colleagues, Gary Kobe and specifically, had really recognized that Facebook was how we're going to win this thing. And there was so much tremendous things we could do on it. And the people in America were on Meta at that time, Facebook. And Hillary Clinton, I think, made 6,500 ads, we've heard, or some number around there. We made 5.8 million. But during that time, we were a factory of content, generating videos and videos and videos that were going out on Trump's Facebook, Trump's Twitter, going out on ads. And, there was the Dan Scavino part, which was the kind of more viral grassroots thing that was starting to build. And we were flooding that behind that with just volume and, getting billions and billions of impressions every week. And it's hard for people to see, if you're just sharing the big accounts, Trump's real Donald Trump, there was stuff going out, but a lot of that content was all being manufactured. And the way that we saw MAGA internally was how to prospect new donors, how to get people at rallies, how to actually get functional stuff, not just create rage. Mm-hmm. So most social media influencers, they don't know why they're doing things. They're just seeing the stir and they're stirring the pot. And our job, different than a Dan Scavino, was how to take that rage and activate it. How do you get them to a ballot box? How do you get them to get to a rally? How do you get them to donate money? How do you get them to pull out their wallet and give you a thing? Mm-hmm. And in the Republican Party, that had just never really happened in any significant way. The Democrats owned the small dollars. They thought they were the party of the people and we were the party of the big rich people, because the Republican Party had never really tapped that. And in that time of 16, our company, Giles Parscale at the time, was tapped to work with the Republican National Committee to bridge that for the first time ever. And we did it through a lot of new ways that had never been done in politics. We kind of reinvented the way a campaign operated and what put in its goals first. And we separated the campaign almost into two parts. There was the New York part that was occurring, which is what, leaked like a sieve. And most people knew about because everybody was leaking on each other, and there was, people stabbing each other in the back. You had a room full of different major characters: the Steve Bannon, the David Bossie, the Jared Kushner, Kellyanne Conway. Those are very common names because those were the people that had proximity to Trump. They were in the Trump Force One, flying around with them. And then there was the shadow campaign, and the shadow campaign was running in San Antonio, Texas. It had more people, had 100+ people. It spent all the money. It wasn't spent on Trump Force One other than that. It managed almost everything that was what people saw outside of real Donald Trump and his official pages and what he said and presented at the events. And so everything else was kind of in San Antonio, and we were targeting and looking at data and trying to say, how do we get voters to show up? Because look, Trump gets 99% of the voters show up. It's him. But how do we beat that 1%? Where do we play a game to fight where Hillary's not looking, like in Michigan and Wisconsin? How do we get to new voters? How do we look at data in new ways? How do we get people? I always say, if you're explaining, you're losing, and you're entertaining, you're winning. How do we entertain these voters to get them to make action? And we started to learn statistical probability on things like if they donated $1, their actions were higher to do things. If they came to a rally, how likely to get them? And it was all top level funnel marketing, how to drive them into decision making processes. And politics had not seen that commercial aspect yet. And at least on the Republican side, there were some rumors about it, and people had put out some stuff in 2012 that Obama, and I believe that's true. I just think no one had done it on our scale that it did. And I had the freedom to do that because I almost had my own campaign in San Antonio that was hidden from Trump and they didn't all understand it. And I was able to run it with almost pure autonomy.
When you say hidden, it was basically you were just in control
it was hidden
of
from
that
the press.
Aspect.
It was hidden from the press until an article comes out, I think 2 weeks in the bunker from Sasha Eisenberg and he's gonna be mad, I don't remember his name, the other guy. They came down in an interview. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how this game worked. Steve Bannon comes to me and says, Brad, take him down there and show him what you're doing in San Antonio. I'm like, okay, great. I really like to show him everything. I didn't know there was an on the record, off the record, on background, deep background. I'll kill you if you say something, whatever that, the entire code of ethics that doesn't really exist, but does exist as long as you have leverage to say something. And I didn't understand that. So I do 2 full days on the record.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
I can imagine that.
And, they take some things out of context. So one of the biggest things they take out of context is we're making I run a culture of creativity. And this is something that we had talked about a lot about. And one of those creatures of creativity was I told all these young people that were so passionate, make whatever you want. And then I'll have to prove it. Most campaigns run on a system of prevention, and I wanted to run a system of mitigation. I wanted errors to happen because I knew that if we had just a few errors, we would get so much more, and we would change the way people could see politics and see Donald Trump. And so they spit out some crazy things. You put a 22-year-old in front of a computer, and you never know, a 24-year-old, you never know what you're going to get. And a couple of them made some pretty racy hits on Hillary. Well, he never ran them because they were racy and crazy. But, when you have reporters on the record just walking around looking over kids' shoulders like, you're running that? And the kid's like, I hope so. And, those things, when people looked really into it, like, oh, no, they had never ran. And, I wasn't going to put out that kind of stuff. But was I pushing the edge? Yes. Was I okay? There were some Russian soldiers in the background. Who cares? That hit piece doesn't mean anything. Like, who cares? There's some Russian soldiers in the background of 1 second of a video of a clip that's being on Facebook that got 50,000 views. The only people that care about that are people in the bubble who are trying to make some excuse to say, look, you're bad. Look, you made a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, I made a mistake, but I did 5,000 things right that you can't get done. So, that's how MAGA comes alive. And it comes apart alive from kind of multiple things. The rallies, establish this action event. Dan Scavino does an amazing job with real Donald Trump. The surrogate program really starts to build a singleized message. Really they feel like they can be finally fiery and fight back with the mainstream media. And then what we do, which is this large scale, marketing program, which is still, I've been told, one of the largest ever in Facebook history. We spent $100 million in 90 days.
You really created a movement, and a lot of people don't know how to create a movement, right?
Yeah.
Walk me through that process of how you get people excited about something and then able to execute on that.
Well, there's a lot of parts to it. The first thing is you have to educate them that there's a disease. So, we see these commercials on TV all day, and they're like, that skin problem you have, you can fix, or whatever that is. So the problem going into 2015, when I was first hired and I started kind of learning about, what their mission was and how the way Trump saw it and the way that the team was saying things in calls, what I saw was, and our team saw, people didn't recognize they were sick. The country didn't realize they were sick. So the first thing about making that movement was, how do we get 60, 80 million people to know they're sick? They know it. Either they're afraid to say it out loud, and again, as I said earlier, reality is an acquired taste. Most people don't like the taste of it. And they just accepted a bad status quo. And then we started to emphasize things in the movement and by entertaining. We couldn't explain to them we're sick. We need to entertain them to it. We need the meme warfare. Most people didn't know what any of this stuff was then. We were making memes, 10 years ago and, to this stuff and no one had ever seen anything like it. And the volume we were doing, we were repeating on them. And then we gave them, the next step is to get them to accept the framing and the acceptance of this messaging, and then get people like Donald Trump and other people of high authority in the content to say this is true. Then the social proof itself was all the responses we were doing, the ability to accelerate those responses, the way to get people to retweet and reshare things. And that kind of became, as I know now, the language is called social proof. At the time, I knew that was the mob saying this is true. And then lastly, you got to give them an outlet. You got to give them things to do. So you had the Trump rallies. You had finally a place to donate and feel good. We had automations and marketing things. We had content that made them smile, and we just kept feeding it to them. It almost became like a TV show. It became The Apprentice for President, and they could consume it all day. And then they started to feel like they were part of something. And then they started to, what that was doing, and I'm going to use the language that I know now because I've studied this now from what we did. Some of this was gut at the time, was we allowed it to be honorable to be from flyover country again, be honorable to be a Christian conservative. We made it honorable again, all these things that DEI and leftists and the media and LGBTQ had done was to shame everybody into these false things. And because they had leverage to exile them, get them out of their jobs or imply pain somehow to them. And when that was happening, they were shifting to these things that they knew didn't feel naturally honorable, but they thought they had to, or they couldn't survive. And I think Trump is the master reset at the moment. And compared to today, you used to watch TV commercials then, and a person would have a MAGA, or not TV commercial, a TV news thing, and somebody would have a MAGA hat on, they're getting beat up.
Yep.
It was so shameful to even support this man and what he was saying. And now I sit in the meetings today, and I'm even talking to some old staff that was there, and they're like, it's a whole different world now walking in today. It's now honorable to do what we're doing. And that is the shift, and that's what that movement was about. It took some reflection to see, but it was extremely natural because I knew it was the right thing to do because I came from flyover country. I came from Canada. My whole life was about, trying to fight these East and West Coast powers that feel like they're going to tell you what to do and you're not good enough and go in your corner. And I think that Trump had busted that. But then COVID brought it all back in a flash. So, and now there's the post-COVID world, which I think now COVID actually was a disaster to us, but long-term, I actually think it's going to be a gift to Christianity because I think everyone saw what it meant to be controlled and be locked up and to lose faith and what death really, and to look it in the eyes. And I think we're now going through a revival.
I completely agree. And you all made politics entertaining. You made it cool. It's like the cool thing right now to know what's going on, to be proud to wear the American flag. And it's completely different than it was in 2015, because I remember in 2015, people were taking the Trump International signs when I was working for Trump and throwing them in the canals. Those same people, when Trump won, were asking for inauguration tickets, right? But now everybody's out in the open supporting, and I think we saw that this time around.
There's still further to go. It's better. Not everywhere. I don't think, you're going to see a lot of MAGA signs in, downtown San Francisco. But they're there, though. The people are there. It's still... Look, what you honor and shame is very set by where you live, because the fears of exile, pain, and poverty are real to your community. So this is why you see tribalism across the United States. There was a study I read about a person moving from a family that moved from San Francisco and moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and they tracked 5 families moving one way and 5 families moving the other way, and within just a couple of hours, the family that moved from San Francisco to Fort Worth started speaking differently about what they honor and shame. There was different language in the study, but what they're saying is what they agreed to, what they did. What they were saying is, I need to fit in. Okay, my kids go to school. I can't have them not going to birthday parties. Okay, so, in San Francisco, it's like, you need to support all these DEI initiatives to come to my kid's party. In Fort Worth, they're like, if you come with this DEI initiatives and not a cowboy hat on, you're not going to get in. So they immediately feel that difference in pressure, and they react to it. Humans have an incredible desire to be part of a community and not be exiled. And digital warfare and digital social media are what unfortunately my child, who's 25, lives in, is one where if you say one thing wrong on the internet, you're canceled. And they live in that kind of pressure, and that exile pressure is extremely powerful to try to cultivate decisions. And why it's so important that social media companies and everything have a playing field that don't create a community that can shame our culture into an entire un-American thing or different things like that. And you see it everywhere. And I think one thing I love that Donald Trump did, and I didn't really see it on day one, but I see it completely today, is he broke that entire false honor and shame system and tore it down to the ground. And everyone got to go, no, this is what my values really are. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to be fearful because Trump's taking the arrows for us. You can take all the noise out, all the other stuff. I don't agree with everything, obviously, that's been public. But like, I agree with that part tremendously. Mm-hmm. I agree that needed to be torn down. And Donald Trump saw it. People always want to call him ignorant or stupid, which is the dumbest thing ever if you ever know him. He's an extremely intelligent man and can really read what's going on in the world and like can juggle like 50,000 things at one time.
It has so much energy. He barely sleeps.
His energy is, I'm 30 years younger than him, and I'd be like, boss, can I please go to sleep on, and can you, he called me at 5:30 in the morning, call me at midnight the same day. And I'd just be like, or midnight and then 5:30 the next morning, it's like, hello, it's your favorite president. Are you awake yet, Brad? Yeah.
And working on doing what you do, Brad, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time, but you never get tired either.
That's
you
not
don't.
true.
You're fueled by, when I see you, you're fueled and you're very passionate about what you're doing now, even more so now than you were then. And I think because
I've changed
you've changed, right? So your faith in God has changed.
I would say that I was torn early in my life by religion and the church. My wife was like raised Catholic. We had a negative view on church. I was always faithful. I had the values of Christianity in every way. I didn't give thanks enough. I did go to church for a lot after my first divorce. I went to church for like a couple of years, took my daughter there. I was, she'd always push against, but then the church started saying some things, and then I kind of started feeling like it was a gang. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of like, what are you going to do for me? And I was like, wait, hold on. I'm supposed to do something for you every day. And I got torn up because the church guy recognized, I think the pastor at this church, he recognized my marketing skills, and then he tried to get me to do a bunch of free stuff for him. And it just started feeling like, I felt like, well, this just makes you bigger. I didn't have a problem with that. It just made me trust it less. I actually stopped going after that because I didn't want him to ask me to do anything more. And it was just stuff to make to increase his name. It was a super church in the area in San Antonio I was in. And so, and then Trump World started, and I lost connection to all that. And unfortunately, what became most important to me was having people tell me I was doing a good job, and that became I became a slave to that kind of affirmation. Because when you're in that job, 30% of the people are telling you suck, 30% say you want to die, and then 30% of people are saying you're great. And you want to keep telling yourself you're the great side and you're not the sucky or the dead side. And it's a tough mental job.
It is. Well, searching for that outside validation or constantly seeking for the outside validation, it's extremely difficult. And I feel like your purpose, right? Your purpose was different then than it is now.
Yeah, at that point, I thought I needed somebody else to give it to me. It wasn't until afterwards when I finally figured out that, serving God and being and for me, it was tremendously that it's also how to manage my emotions, which I couldn't control the future with anxiety. I couldn't control the past with regret. And I couldn't definitely control the current with frustration and anger. And once I let that go and understood that I only had control of a few things, and that was my perception, what I do, and who I trust, that was like a mind-blowing moment for me when I could finally recognize and give myself a calculation every time I felt something to say, like almost like a color chart in my head of whenever I'm feeling something to go, which one is this? Is it valid, first of all? Is this anxiety? Is this frustration? And then to recognize I build structures for myself that demand behavior, and if that's not the right thing happening, to change my structure. And that gave me a lot of peace, because when you're a visionary person, I believe that it's hard to call yourself that, but other people call me this a lot. It's easy to think that you can control the future because you've made so many things happen based off your vision. There's whole things in San Antonio and around the world and President Trump and all this stuff because I had a vision, a moment where I go, if we do this, this could happen. So then you start to believe that you can control everything with that anxiety. If you can work hard enough anxious, but that's not actually true. You can impact it, you can serve it, you can make things happen, but you can't control it. And I learned that the hard way in some ways, but I don't know if I would have learned it if I wouldn't have learned it the hard way, because I would have kept probably thinking that I'm smarter than the reality.
Do you think sometimes you need to reach rock bottom to be able to have those moments of enlightenment?
Well, I hope not. I hope most people don't have to go through that. Maybe I did.
Well, at least adversity and obstacles, I think.
Well, I had so much success. I don't know if I would have learned the hard stuff without having seen both the top and the bottom. I've seen the very top, and I've seen probably not the very bottom. There's people who've been a lot worse than I have. Mm-hmm. I had a bad couple hours, but really nothing really bad happened to me. A lot of people have bad hours. Mine's happened just to be, because my life at the time was the Truman Show mixed with Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know who was trying to shoot me, and I didn't know where the cameras were. And nobody wants to live a life like that. My life that day, if it wouldn't have been kind of famous, would have been nothing. It was just a bad day, and I chalked it off the next day, and nobody would have cared because nothing happened about it. The media made a big deal about it.
Well, everybody has bad days, but you were amplified, especially in that moment.
Yeah, I'd already actually left the campaign. I wasn't even with the campaign anymore. I'd already said I'm leaving. The rumors were that weekend, which was really stressing me out, was that, Jared wanted me to come back. The campaign wasn't going very well. This leaving, having me leave hadn't improved anything. No one could make decisions, come back and do things. And I think, that was kind of the last kicker in my personal life and everything, because I almost said, yes, let me just go kill my life some more. And the people who cared about me were like, that is the dumbest thing we ever heard, and attacked, and, just all spiraled out of control. I hadn't been sleeping much at that point anyways, but it was a lot of stress. People shooting at my house, the death threats. I had 3 armed security guards everywhere I went. People throw things at me. I had a woman spit in my face in the airplane and just, flip me off like this, right to my face. And it was always every moment looking over your shoulder, and it's just tense. The world was a much different place during that period of time. 19, 20, 16 all the way to 20. And then COVID, and January 6th happens. All of that somehow creates a weird reset. And then Joe Biden, the administration, just messes up. But anyways, all of that resets. And today, I don't worry about that at all anymore. But I also don't care what anybody thinks anymore.
So that shift was a huge part of your life now and what you're doing now.
Yeah, but it was more than that day. It was lessons from a couple of mentors of mine. It was refining my faith. I went on a trip to Israel, and I spent 2 weeks kind of walking the steps and learning about Jesus. And I started to learn, he was doing some of the same stuff. He had donors, and he had the Romans trying to take him down, and he had misfits all over the place. He had someone trying to stab him in the back. When you start looking at it through your own lens, it's like, man, this dude went through everything I went through. Maybe just lower tech. But other than that, it was a lot of the same story. And that started to really kind of wake my eyes up and start saying, man, I'm not living something new. There's an instruction manual. There's places for me to learn and to strengthen. I need to start. Now I start asking the right questions. And the questions always before was how do I get more what I want? And when I learned that more is not a thing, everything shifted. Because I had just been seeking more, because that's what my father had taught me in a lot of ways, which go get more, go win, go get more. If you win that championship, go get another one. If you get that one, go get another one. once you get $1 million, go get 10 million. And there was, I always ask people to do the same thing. I said, what is more? And they can never explain it to me. More what? More houses? Okay, you got the house. Now what's more? And then I said, well, when are you happy? Oh, you want more? And a great man in my life taught me that. And that more thing is a key. I try to ask myself that every time though. Sometimes I'll challenge myself like, I should make some money doing that. And then I go, what do I want? I just want more, and but what I really want is more good. What's a victory now? More money or less babies being aborted? What's more now? A country that can survive the next 250, that kind of stuff. So those are the things that became my more. And when I shifted that, man, I got a lot of peace.
So what do you feel is your biggest mission now moving forward?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to, man, that's a convoluted question. There's a lot of things I have. One is I want a fair playing field in the media. I think it's, and social media and everywhere else. I think that voices, there should be a right to be wrong. And there should be more voices. There shouldn't, I absolutely loathe cancel culture. And one of my biggest missions has been to completely end cancel culture for anybody on Christian right. And I think I've made, and my team has made great strides at doing that. No one talks about Trump's being canceled in this whole last presidential cycle. Why? Because you can't now. Because we built our own tools. We built our own things. And removing cancel culture is big. I think the other thing is, fighting for self-governance and like having the strongest political person be the person closest to you versus somebody, so far away you can't talk to. And, also helping bring kind of values back and family-based values. I see these kids struggling today and they just don't have families. They don't have people to turn to. There's no voice in their ear of reason somewhat. And they're just told to go get everything they want and more. And I just see that as a tragedy that's going to occur and whatever we can do to help that, and fight that. And I want to see government shrink. I could do this all day. There's a bunch of things I want, but the main purpose is to serve God and to try to fight for what is right for this country. Because a lot of countries don't survive past 250 years. Like for us to survive another 250, everyone just thinks it's just a given. The Constitution will stand forever. But as we learned in the history books, nothing lasts forever. But this is the greatest experiment in human history. And I'd like to see the next 250 be where the first 250 was the experiment. The next 250 is the juice of that experiment.
But I see the morals and the ethics and God coming back. There's definitely a shift.
100%. I have not noticed that the last 8 months. Well, I think the moment it started, I really believe this is the movie Sound of Freedom and what happened in Hollywood. And I think there's part of that is greed. And I think part of that is good. And I think what happened with Sound of Freedom, and if you just think of every day since then, I was walking down in a airport and I looked to my right, there was a Time magazine, there was a picture of Jesus Christ or a painting, and not a picture obviously, painting of Jesus Christ, and it said, Christ is back in Hollywood. And at that moment, The Chosen kind of led this in some of these things, but Hollywood has such an impact on what we do and how we talk and how we see ourselves because it's entertainment. Entertainment is where we see our culture. It's where we visualize through almost a mirror our culture. And I think with the Sound of Freedom, there was a moment where Americans were like, this immigration, if kids are really going through this and this is what's happening, it was eye-opening. This is real story about illegal immigration. It's about taking humans and turning them to slaves and controlling them and taking advantage of them. And 2, it was a Christian story given by Angel Studios, and it showed that Hollywood no longer was in control because the distribution had changed. It had changed since 16. And the movie companies now had the ability to get that message out. And 3, after that, everyone got confidence. It's okay. There was a big moment in The Sound of Freedom that I actually believe this internet and the world kind of saw it was okay. And then you saw the melee elections and all these things start to occur in Christian Christ. And that all just, it's like a domino effect. I do think Sound of Freedom was a big moment, that movie, where the internet tipped, that people were like, we're winning. And that then now is capitulated a lot of ways with Trump. Trump's about politics. Sound of Freedom was about protecting children, protecting people who are innocent. It's about a Christian. It's about a person stepping up and serving and being bigger than the role, the job. Mm-hmm. And that kind of story had not been told for a long time. They've been all these superhero movies with DEI and Disney characters that want to get the new hero is to be, transgendered and all these things that occurred. And this was a story about saving children, not perverting children. And I think that moment, the country, if you look at our data and you look at the shift in culture, that was that summer, everything started to shift. And I think now, these young kids, from Iran, from the Christian movements happening in Iran, to the Christian movements that are happening in South America, to Christianity across the entire Middle East, from Christianity for our young kids now, it's not about religion.
No.
It's about God and Christ and what that means. And I cannot sit here and be a Bible expert, especially with who I know people are listening right now. There are people that are a much better expert than me, but I am an expert at knowing what the people are talking about. No one almost gets more data than me. I consume a large amounts of data from all of my companies and all the things we get access to. And I can see it. I can see it change. And it's hard to explain but I've been living it for 10 years and you can see the trends now.
Do you see that change in data with the younger generation? Because that's what I see, and I'm not a tech person, but I see it. It's almost
throughout. It's throughout. It's either one that it's growing, or two, they're free to say it. Now, I think a little bit of both are happening, but it's not an evangelical religious movement. It's like it's a Christ movement, and I think it's a great thing. And a lot of people said, I don't have to go to church to believe in God. I don't have to go to church to be a Christian. And I would recommend it every once in a while, but, and to give thanks. But I think that the kids right now, they had a choice to connect with this perversion and to continue this unfortunate millennial thing that they were sold from the left when they were being completely controlled by them. And they rejected it, and they're rejecting it in huge numbers because it's not right.
Right.
And they're seeing the damage on the other side. This damage of inclusivity is more important than being, having good values.
Well, do you think because now in Hollywood it's okay to talk about God, do you think that's going to continue? And is that the main trigger for the younger generation?
Hence why I said earlier a little about greed. I mean, if it keeps being profitable, we'll probably keep having it. But I think that's good. It takes, money is still the blood flow of what makes economies move. And I think that they're going to have to be able to make money. But look at the money they're making. I mean, Sound of Freedom crushed Indiana Jones. Disney's $100 million budget, right? Do you want to see, this video, the same thing played over again? Or do you want to see a story about really someone saving children and go see some reality? It's still a movie, and always movies are dramatic, but, and I think you saw it again now with Reagan. You've seen it with all these other, The Blind, and you saw it with other documentaries that are occurring. I mean, Christian-based movies have set almost every record this last 18 months. And that is usually a sign of people crying for that. Or not crying for it, but wanting it and consuming it. And it's like you can't feed them enough now. And I think that is the most wonderful thing that's happened since the mid-'80s kind of thing. Like, this is a moment where that's winning over. And Elon played a big part in that too, buying Twitter and allowing some voices the right to be wrong again. Some movie producers, the Harmon brothers, what they did with Angel Studios with that. These people deserve these moments where they saw, and Trump played a big part in that. And, Joe Rogans and all these people that are all starting to say, this kind of started making sense. I think that's big.
Well, and since then, a lot of actors are coming out and professing their love for God and faith, which you never saw before.
Yeah, or even Trump.
Or, well, and I think, with Trump, I noticed the biggest shift after the assassination attempt. I saw his whole demeanor change.
I think it's been longer than that. I believe his demeanor, I think that he's gone through a few humbling moments. January 6th was one. The assassination attempt is definitely one. I think the Biden, the Harris change and see there's the system. I think he surrounded himself by people that were, and Susie was a great person to be surrounded by for him. And I think he started surrounding himself by people who had his best interests in mind.
And weren't looking out for themselves or trying to backstab him. That's one thing. Every time I went to Washington, I feel like even the Republicans were stabbing each other in the back. Like it was just.
That's stabbing in the back is how they move. That's the only way they can move around the city. So, so it's like a part of the art form. But I think Trump he's also, there's nothing else other than humbling this experience. I've got to see a lot of it. I got to be parts of lots of it. I'm still part of it. There's only a few of us that are originally, I got to see one of the OGs today. When we first got on that plane, there was like 5 of us, I wasn't even the first, I wasn't allowed on the plane at the beginning, but I was employee 1. And then, the first 5, 10 people, all of us have gone through a humbling experience. But I think Trump has significantly, all the people in his family have, from Don Jr. to Eric. It's a beautiful country, and you cannot be anything but humbled by what's happened. I think Trump has seen that. I think he's gotten wiser. I think that the punching down thing has really stopped. You can punch across, punch up, but no one likes when you punch down. I think that's significantly changed. I think he's much more about the policy now than the kind of just weird feuds. And I'm sure right now in your YouTube comments, you're going to get 9,000 comments saying he's not that, blah, blah, blah.
He's not what?
He's still that. He's still Italian.
No, I think, Brad,
I'm saying the comments will be that because people don't want to believe that he's changed.
No, but I think a lot of people do. Yeah. I think a lot of people do, and I think that's why one of the many reasons we saw the results in this election. I think people saw him as a human. They saw him as a grandfather. They saw him as a
You have better expectations of YouTube commenters than I do.
I guess I just think I think things are rainbows and unicorns still, I guess.
There'll be at least 500 that I was a Russian spy, which in 2016, I didn't even have a passport, which is one of my favorite. So they asked me in the investigation. I don't ever put this out on tape. I want to put this on tape. So during the investigation, they asked me, how many times have you been to Russia or to Europe? And I was like, I haven't had a passport in 10 years. I haven't left Texas in 7 years. So I'm the best spy in history that can get around the world without a passport. And so everybody's like, Russia. And I'm like, I never met a Russian. And I don't even know what a Russian is. But it's so funny. It's like, that's why the investigation went nowhere. Everybody's like, there'll still be about 50 of those comments. Then there'll be, 50, Trump still does this and Trump does that. And they can't accept the reality that none of that's true. It's like the grassy knoll will never end. September 11th was the George Bush plot. They just can't accept these things, and there'll probably be 10 comments on that. And so, when people can't process what's happened, they create a conspiracy in their head. Or they'll buy a conspiracy because it's the only way they can explain it. They can't explain it's not happening what they think should happen. And so, and it's, Russia is the most amazing, great conspiracy across the country. A country that can only sell vodka and now sells other products is the best marketing of politics, though, in the world. So they can't sell anything else. They have no other marketing skills. This is not their talent. No one ever goes, let's go hire a Russian to sell our cars for us. But then all of a sudden, they're the greatest political experts in the world, and they can manipulate entire countries into politics. But they can't figure out how to just make themselves billionaires by selling anything else. This is the greatest irony of all time, because they're just like, we're such great marketers. Let's only manipulate elections and let's not make any money with that talent.
It's so crazy that people believe it because knowing everybody for so long.
People have a complete misconception because of Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live and all these other things. I'm just saying there's a bunch of shows that establish what these characters are.
The Apprentice, they had Trump singing on Saturday Night Live.
Well, Trump Apprentice also didn't help. So the characters of Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric are to play this really tough, we're this family empire thing, which is not really the real part. Mm-hmm. Like, as I've heard from them, they were really forced into these kind of parts where they had to act like this because they're, playing this tough. But like, for the life of me, most of them don't want to fire anybody.
They're such kind, empathetic people.
It's a false thing. But you believe The Apprentice. You start to believe Saturday Night Live that like, Eric's this goofy, one that can't feed himself, who's all of them are highly intelligent. All of that's all BS. But, people, if you're a liberal, it makes you feel better thinking they're all stupid.
But I have to say that a lot of my friends, which you would think are liberal, once Trump won this time around, I got messages like,
I just want to say, if you become a presidential candidate and you have a staff of people around you, probably nobody in all of that's stupid.
100%.
Yeah, and most likely you might be a little ruthless, but I think also you're not going to get there if you don't have some kind of thing. It's these broad brushes of paint on people and to define who they are that are funny, but. The Trump family's great. I mean, I'm still very close with all of them. I talked to each of them today, almost.
All right. So, Brad, you rarely give interviews, right? And you're rarely given an open mic to just talk about anything you want to speak to. But I think what's really interesting that people would find fascinating is you have access to lots of data. What's the most surprising data that you see?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. One of the things that's I see a lot is we ask the American people a lot about what they think. And significantly, almost on every major issue, Americans agree 80%. The separation between what we really want different is very low. Even on some of the toughest topics of immigration, it's all about how it's framed. So let's take the wall, for example, or the border crisis. If you say build a wall and stop illegal immigration, it gets 46% support. If you say stop child trafficking and stop and close the border, you get 86% support. It's the same policy, by the way. It's just framed on what you're doing. You build the wall, you're going against a human value of love thy neighbor. But if you stop child trafficking, everybody wants to protect children. So I don't know who those 14% that want to stop child trafficking, but that is a significant way of framing in data. So when you actually look at America, everyone's like, we're so polarized. Now, we're polarized on how we fight. We fight in the margin. We usually fight over bad framing. We're not fighting over the policy. So if you take policies, even LGBTQ issues, it's kind of like gay people. The left wants to say the Republicans hate gay people. No, nobody does. We pray for them. We hope they're the best, everything. But the left wants a gang called LGBTQ to have power to impose themselves. And we're saying we're against the gang of LGBTQ. I'm not against any of the letters separated. I'm against it. It's like saying I'm not against black people, but I'm against Bloods and Crips. You got to be careful, but the framing gets confusing, and then people have this problem inside of it, right? And so it's that mentality. So this 80-20 issues we're very shared. Like Republicans, Democrats don't have any problem with gay people. Like that's not what it is. Maybe people want to handle it different ways and how to internalize it, but it's not like they're against it. And abortion's the same way, and all these other issues that way. We're really not as polarized as we think. We're polarized on framing, not on policy. That's first. One of the major things that's occurred in a data standpoint is we've tremendously changed. People say we're polarized as things happen. If you look at pre-2007-8, small dollar fundraising was not a real thing in politics. So the average small citizen couldn't give $10, and that $10 really added up to power. With the change of the finance rules and the change of the internet and the change of ability to go get $5 from people, who money was coming from, and to answer those people with the framing they want to hear to give the money has changed. So if you take the electric, and I had a whiteboard here and I drew them from 0 to right to left, 100%, you would say most sides are around 40%, 38%, right, 30% left. In the middle, you have this 20-some percent, 22, 24%. Everyone's different. Everybody could have that little difference, but it's pretty obvious. Third kind of range, or a little less than that for the independents. That being said, prior to that point in time, most fundraising that came from people, from big donors that would write checks, and the people who were really having influence over the campaign was very center right, center left, and closer to the middle. Once small dollar fundraising came, the small donors are from the far extremes, because a center right person making a job of $50,000 doesn't care much, ain't sending you $10. However, a far right person or a far left person that's highly ideological, highly motivated by this will give you $10. They tend to be on the fringes. They tend to like extreme framing into their positions. Okay. This has led the politicians to run towards those dollars by becoming framing they want to hear. So if you read fundraising emails, they're almost always more extreme than what you see the candidate saying. But the candidate also has to be careful, because consultants in their mind who want that money to buy TV commercials and to make their money say, why don't you say more of what these people want so we can raise more money? Which pushes the candidate's part, which puts an appearance of polarization, even though the data clearly shows most 80% of Americans actually almost all agree on the same policies. So we've done two things. We've forced by an incentive structure, which says go get money from extremes. These very far right, far left pay like most of the bills. And we've moved away from the incentive structure of the center right people and center left people to pay the bills, which then moves our candidates apart from each other. And then we choose framing that helps those two sides raise money, and then loses the framing that used to be like a Bill Clinton framing kind of thing of saying, I want to get as many people as possible to agree with me. Because now those two incentive structures are at odds with each other. And the thought process is in most politics is we need more money to win the election. Money wins elections. So run to the place where you get the most money, then kind of run commercials that are less crazy. And so that's the loop we've caught in. And if you really look at polarization, it nearly identically matches small dollar fundraising.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. You rarely give interviews, so I'm really grateful. And I did drive you crazy. Yeah. Here you are meeting with all the big dogs in Palm Beach. And I'm like, come do an interview with me. And I'm really grateful because you are a real friend. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everything you did for me too.
Mirrors and Windows with Katrina Campins.